Hello, beautiful bookish family. Welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. This is the last wrap-up of 2021. These are all the books that I read in quarter four. These quarter wrap-ups are really doing it for me. It just seems so much more cohesive and comfortable to talk about books in a quarterly wrap-up for each part of the year. This wrap-up will not include my manga or any of the graphic novels that I read this quarter. It's just the regular books, novels, etc. Most of the books in this video I ended up reading for the book clubs that I am a host for. There weren't many books that I got to read in this quarter that were more personal choices, simply because my schedule was overbooked with grad school and working, everything that's going on. So I'm really happy that I ended up finding some new favorites in the book club choices that we got to read. Just keep in mind that these were mostly, technically, not selected by me. They were selected by everyone in my book clubs. Without further ado, let's get started.
It could change the world. On we go.
Alright, so we're covering basically October, November, December of 2021. I will make a separate video for the manga that I read as well. But I started off with Binti Home, which is book 2 in the Binti series. I ended up giving this, did I give it 3 stars, I think? It was okay. It gave me a lot of answers to the series that I was really questioning, but it was still very underwhelming for me. It's going in an interesting place that I think may be more interesting to someone who is more invested than I am. I really enjoyed the concepts of the discussions on cultural differences. We got to learn more about the origin story of Binti. It's called Home because she's really understanding her home. It's more about the background history of the Himba people set 300 years in the future, in combination with information about the wars that were happening in book 1. So if you really liked book 1, I think you'll really like book 2 because of the background information that's provided, which I think is a setup for the plot to develop further after book 1 into book 3. But it's just not enough for me. I kind of lost interest, so I'm going to DNF this series, which I think I mentioned before. There's just other sci-fi that I'm way more hyped up to read, so there's that. I also read in quarter 4 Words of Radiance and Oathbringer, the flop. Okay. Incoming really unpopular opinion. You guys know I love Brandon Sanderson. His writing really does it for me. It's really good writing. He does not disappoint when it comes to plot. Okay, I'm a plot-driven reader, and his plots are A1 sauce. However, these books are so long, and the length of them really brought this down. So, I'm really sorry. Really sorry to say. Okay, book 1, Way of Kings, I gave 5 stars. Book 2, Words of Radiance, I gave 4 stars. Book 3, Oathbringer, I gave 3 stars. We're on a downward trend. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'm currently reading book 4, which is Rhythm of War at the time of filming this. It's getting a little better, I think. I have high hopes that book 4 is really going to blow me out of the water. But even though I love the story and the characters in this series so much, sometimes it just kind of dragged out, and usually it's not an issue for me when a book drags out with characters that I really enjoy, but I think there's still a limit to that, and it just way surpassed that limit. It just went way longer, and I was ready for it to wrap up, and it's fine. So I have a feeling a lot of people are gonna thumbs down this video just because of my unpopular opinion about these 2 books. It's okay. I'm tired of flashbacks, you guys. I I know flashbacks is one of Brandon Sanderson's like favorite writing devices, but I'm not a fan of flashbacks all that much. Like used, sprinkled out throughout a series, okay, but as a main point of the structure of the story in every book, I can't do it. There is a vlog for these. I don't know if that vlog has come out yet before this video goes up, or if the vlog will come out after this. So if it's already out, I will leave a link up above if you want to hear my thoughts. Be warned, if you love this series and you cherish it, don't hate me and don't watch that vlog. Secret Lives of Great Artists. The Secret Lives of Great Artists stuff that your teacher never told you. I think I gave this a 3. It was okay. I was just looking for more art content to read, and the clickbait title, this gotcha title, I mean, come on. Actually, yeah, as an art teacher, I have taught some of these things to my kids, but most of it was just really dumb gossip that is not relevant, doesn't provide any further education. Like, it's talking about all these master artists. Keep in mind, most of them are old dead white guys, and no, as a teacher, I would not teach my students that this old guy was a philanderer, because that's not helpful to their education. I would rather just not teach them about that artist and insert a BIPOC artist who is relevant and shows them that people who look like them can actually achieve great things. So probably not going to teach them about this artist anyway. It's fine. There's plenty of other contemporary people who are much more relevant and talk about much more engaging things. Just because it's a classic doesn't make it great. Hot take of the day, drop the mic, moving on to the next book. Let's talk about Mexican Gothic really quickly. I did an entire book review on this. I will leave the link up above. I actually categorized this in my mind as a science fiction, but it's not categorized like that online. I totally understand why. This is not a scary, super scary horror in my opinion, even though there are horror aspects in here that made me shudder. I wasn't in it for the horror, I was in it for the atmospheric vibes. There is romance. The horror that's in here, I think, depends on the person's relation to the subject matter, and it made me highly uncomfortable. The things that happened in here are horrific, and I think that if you love sci-fi and atmosphere and romance, that you will enjoy this. It is a bit of a slow burn, but that's okay. This definitely put me onto Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing, and I will definitely be checking more out from this author in the future. And Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, I gave this 4 stars. It was really good, and a horror that I feel is more of, I don't even know if this is a category of horror. Is there such a thing as women's horror? To me, it focused mostly on atrocities against women. And this makes me think how much I really need to start doing research and make that video about every subgenre of horror. That is my goal for 2022, is to make that video by October, to read enough horror to get content for that video. But anyway, I just feel like as a woman, this made me very uncomfortable, and especially because it's so set into history. It just talked about cycles of violence and is this imaginary place in which the antebellum South is still thriving on a station or ship in space that is headed for a destination that I cannot reveal. There were some loopholes here in the science that me and my friends over at the Interstellar Book Club found, but aside from that, this is a very character-driven book, and I think if you're a character-driven reader who enjoys maybe historical fiction and you want to get into sci-fi, this is a great place for you to start. I don't know. But be aware, if atrocities against women or just harm against women is really triggering for you, this book can be really triggering. So be conscious and check into the triggers before you go in. Iron Widow by Xeron J. Zhao. This ended up being one of my favorite books of the year. I loved it so much. A YA science fiction. I mean, I've struggled with YA in the past just as an age group that I don't particularly gravitate towards unless it's a book that I'm looking for as something that I would suggest to my students. As a personal favorite, I don't prefer YA. This, however, was incredible and I personally loved it. The fighting, the action, the logical questions that were asked, and a main character who just doesn't take no for an answer because she has nothing else to lose, so she goes off. It is impeccable. I definitely think that you should go in with an open mind because the plot does get fairly quickly developed, as in the plot that is on the inside cover here, but I think that's a fantastic thing because it doesn't let the story stop there. It is more a conversation of questioning societal standards that allowed this situation to happen. So our main character is one of the strongest main characters I've ever read. I wholly support this author, and after reading this, it's really got me thinking about picking up middle grade because I know that Xeron has a Yu-Gi-Oh! Inspired middle grade book coming out this year. That sounds incredible! That sounds amazing! So I'm not currently a middle grade reader, but who knows? By the end of 2022, you just never know. As a sneak peek of my Q1 wrap up for 2022, I am now reading more romance. Who am I? What? Dark erotica is kind of what I've been into lately, but I'll talk about that in that wrap up video. Just for now, just know that my tastes are changing and are expanding. So if I get into middle grade this year, this might be why. Midnight in Everwood. Just didn't do it. 2 stars. I'm really sorry. I saw this book it was nominated for Goodreads Choice Awards, and I was like, why? Along with the next book that I'm going to talk about was also nominated for a Goodreads Choice Awards, and I just didn't get it. This book was bland to me. I'm really sorry if you like it. I did not like this. I could not wait for it to be over. When we were in the real world, it was interesting. When we were in the real world, because this is a Nutcracker retelling, our main character eventually goes into this fantastical place like they do in the Nutcracker, but once they get there, I totally lost interest. She's a person of privilege in the early 1900s who's about to be married off by her parents, and the conclusion of this book was just stupid. It was just boring. There were so many descriptions of food in this book, but it didn't make me hungry. It didn't make me hungry, it didn't make me thirsty, it didn't make me crave anything. Not even the smut in here or the erotica made me crave anything. It was just bland. It was boring. I don't even know why they were sleeping together. Why are we here? Our villain was trash. Our main character was trash. Her reasonings for doing what she did at the end were trash. She felt like the kind of person who's just, because they're so used to having so much privilege, they don't understand what it really means to either A, be an ally, or to understand any kind of suffering. So when times got hard, she was just like, cool, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna make the most fantastic choices and I'm gonna be a hippie now.
And when this thing's over, I'll meet you at the nearest bar.
Whatever, she gets to be a rich globetrotter now because she'll always have access to everything: food, shelter, comfortability, warmth, friends, people who love her, and she still gets to be a ballerina? Don't care. Moving on to The Wolf and the Woodsman, which I also don't care because I DNF'd this book. It was boring. I also saw this online as a Goodreads Choice Award nominee, and I was like, why? It is a debut novel from a person who usually writes middle grade, I think, and that was pretty evident because our main characters were supposed to be in their late 20s and they read very young. They were making choices that were illogical to me. My favorite parts were the zombie chickens and the folkloric monsters, but even the monsters and the gore was not enough for me to care about. The trip with the thirstiest pair of people that you've ever met, oh my gosh, the way that they were looking at each other and constantly talking about each other in their own heads. I was like, can you guys just get it on and get it over with, because you're getting on my nerves. I just don't care. This whole stupid quest they went on to go to one place to then realize that they needed to go back to the place where they started was like, what was the point? What was the point? I don't care. And after talking about it during the book club with a bunch of friends of mine and they told me the ending, I was like, great, we don't even get full answers. Good thing I didn't waste my time. Anyway, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo is stunning on the other hand, because I gave it 5 stars. I listened to it on audiobook and I loved it. This is definitely a book I can see putting into the library at school. This is a story of a young girl who is Latina and she's living in a household that's extremely religious, and so they're kind of not allowing her to just be a teenager, and she wants to have a boyfriend. So it's kind of like when you push your kids too far to the point where they choose to rebel. But a mother and a daughter trying to understand that while they're both butting heads, they really have each other's best interest in mind. And the ending was just so sweet and so wholesome. I loved it so much. It did wrap up very neatly with a little bow on it at the end, but for a YA, I think that was perfect. She just wants to write poetry, and for any young aspiring writers, I think that this is a great book to read. Was it in verse? I think it was in verse. I read this for the Read a Book in Verse challenge for my TBR game. Didn't disappoint. Totally worth the hype, and I get it. That is it for this video. I think it's gonna be a pretty short video today because I didn't read too many books in quarter 4. As you can see, 2 of the books that I read in quarter 4 were very thick. This is the equivalent of 2 to 3 other books. What are these each? Like 1,000 pages. So if each other book I read was roughly 350 pages, this is over 1,000. This is like 3 books in one. This is like 3 books in one. So technically it's like there's about 6 books between these 2 alone, which is why this wrap up feels a little bit short to me, because usually I have about close to 20 books to talk about. But that's okay. I will get back to you soon with my manga wrap up. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I post videos every week. Catch you later. Bye!
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr.